The grime of Hollowbrook stained Felicity Langdon's fingers, impossible to scrub clean no matter how hard she tried. The winter night pressed against the cracked windows of the tiny room she shared with her ailing father, whose coughs punctuated the gloom like small deaths. Once they had been comfortable, not wealthy but respectable. Now, with her father's illness draining what little they had, respectability seemed like a forgotten luxury. "Felicity," her father wheezed from his bed. "You must not do this." She folded the single dress she owned that wasn't patched or faded, placing it carefully in a small leather bag. "We have discussed this already, father. The arrangement is made. To marry a man you have never met?" His voice cracked, ending in a fit of coughing that made Felicity rush to his side, offering him water from a chipped cup. "Lord Draconis has offered a generous settlement. His solicitor assures me he requires only a wife in name, someone to manage his household affairs while he travels. He is rarely in residence at Blackmere Castle." She smoothed her father's thin hair from his forehead. "And his physician will attend to you. The best care, father." What she did not say was how desperate she had become, how the landlord had cornered her yesterday, suggesting ways she might pay their overdue rent that made her skin crawl, how the apothecary refused further credit for her father's medicine, how the hunger gnawed at her until she felt hollow inside. "There is something not right about this arrangement," her father insisted. "Noblemen do not marry penniless daughters of disgraced scholars." Felicity turned away. She had wondered the same, of course. Why would an apparently wealthy lord choose her? The solicitor had been vague, mentioning something about Lord Draconis requiring a wife of untainted lineage, but with no familial entanglements. Her mother had been from an old family, though one with no fortune or connections remaining. Perhaps that explained it. "The carriage arrives at dawn," she said firmly. "The agreement is signed. I will send for you once you are stronger." In the small, cracked mirror above the washbasin, Felicity studied her reflection. Pale skin, large eyes the color of amber, and dark chestnut hair that fell in waves to her waist. Her only beauty, her mother had once said. Not enough to attract a suitable husband in their diminished circumstances, but apparently enough for a marriage of convenience to a mysterious nobleman. She knew nothing of Lord Draconis beyond his title and wealth. She did not need to know more. This was not about romance or affection. This was survival. The carriage that arrived was black and imposing, drawn by 4 midnight horses whose breath steamed in the pre-dawn air. The driver, his face obscured by the high collar of his coat, loaded her small bag without a word. "Remember your promise," she said to the solicitor, Mr. Graves, who had arrived to witness her departure. "The physician will attend my father today?" "Lord Draconis honors his agreements to the letter," the man replied, his thin lips barely moving. "Now we must depart. His lordship expects punctuality." The journey took 3 days, winding through increasingly remote countryside until mountains loomed on the horizon. Felicity watched villages grow smaller and farther between, forests thicker and darker. On the final day, they traveled only at night, which Mr. Graves explained was to avoid the mountain roads in daylight when bandits might lurk. When they finally crested a hill and Blackmere Castle came into view, Felicity gasped. It was not a castle in the traditional sense but a massive Gothic structure that seemed to grow from the mountainside itself. Black stone towers spiraled toward the night sky, and windows glowed with an eerie bluish light. A vast lake, still as glass, reflected the structure, creating the illusion of a second castle, inverted beneath the water. "Blackmere," Mr. Graves said unnecessarily. "Your new home, Mrs. Draconis." The name felt strange. She was no longer Felicity Langdon but Lady Draconis, wife to a man she had never met. The thought should have terrified her, yet she felt oddly calm. Whatever waited within those walls could not be worse than the slow death of poverty she was escaping. The entrance hall was cavernous, illuminated by candelabras that cast more shadows than light. Servants appeared silently to take her cloak and bag, none meeting her eyes directly. An older woman with silver-streaked hair and ramrod posture introduced herself as Mrs. Hemlock, the housekeeper. "His lordship is currently indisposed," Mrs. Hemlock informed her. He left instructions that you are to be made comfortable and that he will meet you tomorrow evening at dinner. Felicity nodded, hiding her relief. She needed time to gather herself before meeting her new husband. Her chambers were luxurious beyond anything she had imagined. A massive bedroom with a canopied bed, a sitting room with bookshelves lining the walls, and a bathing chamber with actual running water. But despite the opulence, the rooms felt cold, impersonal. No flowers softened the severity of the dark furniture. No personal touches suggested this space belonged to anyone. After bathing and changing into a nightgown that had been laid out for her, finer silk than she had ever touched, Felicity approached one of the tall windows. The moon hung full and heavy above the lake, casting everything in silver light. In the distance, she could see mountains like sleeping giants, their peaks snow-covered even in summer. She was so far from everything familiar, from her father, from the life she had known. Yet the crushing weight of worry had lifted from her shoulders. Whatever bargain she had made, whatever this marriage would entail, she had secured her father's care and her own survival. As she turned from the window, a movement in the garden below caught her eye. A tall figure stood motionless, face tilted toward her window. Though distance obscured his features, she felt certain he was watching her. Then, in a blink, the figure vanished. So quickly she wondered if her tired mind had imagined it. Felicity closed the heavy curtains and retreated to the bed, drawing the covers around her like armor. Sleep came surprisingly easily, deep and dreamless. The next evening, Mrs. Hemlock helped her dress in a gown of deep burgundy that had been provided for her. Another shock to find a wardrobe filled with clothes in her precise measurements. "His lordship is particular about appearances," the housekeeper said, fastening the last button. "He rarely entertains, but when he does, everything must be perfect." "How long have you served Lord Draconis?" Felicity asked, trying to glean any information about her mysterious husband. "Longer than you might imagine," the woman replied cryptically. "The family has ancient roots in these mountains." When Felicity entered the dining room, she found it lit by dozens of candles, casting a warm glow over the massive table that could have seated 30, but was set for only 2. She stood awkwardly, unsure where to sit, when the door at the far end opened. The man who entered moved with fluid grace, his footfalls silent against the stone floor. He was taller than any man she had ever seen, with broad shoulders tapering to a narrow waist. His features were striking: high cheekbones, a straight nose, and a mouth that seemed carved from marble. But it was his eyes that captured her attention. Dark as the night sky and just as fathomless, regarding her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Lady Draconis," he said, his voice deep and richly accented. "Welcome to Blackmere." Felicity cursed, a clumsy movement that made her cheeks flush. "Lord Draconis, thank you for your hospitality." He approached, and she noticed how unnaturally pale his skin was, almost luminous in the candlelight. His hair, black as a raven's wing, was tied at the nape of his neck with a velvet ribbon. He wore no jewelry except for a single ring, a large ruby set in silver on his right hand. "Dorian," he said, stopping several feet from her, "if we are to be husband and wife, even in name only, you should use my given name." "Then you must call me Felicity," she replied, finding her voice steadier than expected. A smile flickered across his lips, so brief she almost missed it. Felicity, happiness. An interesting name for one who has known so little of it. The observation, so personal and accurate, unsettled her. "You know nothing about me. I know more than you might think." He gestured to the table. "Please sit. You must be hungry after your journey." The meal was served by silent attendants who appeared and disappeared with preternatural timing. Felicity noted that while her plate contained roasted meats, vegetables, and bread, Dorian's held only a dark liquid in a crystal goblet, which he occasionally raised to his lips. "You are not eating?" she asked. "I dined earlier," he replied smoothly. "I keep unusual hours. One of many habits you will discover makes me an unsuitable companion." Is that why you sought a wife through such unconventional means? Your habits. His eyes narrowed slightly. I sought a wife for specific qualities. Your lineage through your mother was of particular interest. The Langdons have an old bloodline, even if they have forgotten their history. Felicity's fork paused halfway to her mouth. My mother's family? They were nothing special. Country gentry fallen on hard times generations ago. History is often obscured, rewritten. Dorian studied her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. There are those who believe certain bloodlines carry gifts, abilities that manifest rarely, but when they do, I possess no gifts, Felicity said firmly. Perhaps not, or perhaps they lie dormant. He changed the subject abruptly. Your father, his health improves? I do not know. I have had no word yet. My physician is skilled. He will not fail. Dorian's words carried a weight that sounded almost like a threat, though whether to the physician or to whatever illness plagued her father, Felicity could not determine. Our agreement, she began carefully. You mentioned it would be a marriage in name only. Does that disappoint you? Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. No, she said quickly. I merely wish to understand my place here. My duties. Your duties are simple. You will be mistress of Blackmere in my absence. When I am in residence, you will join me for dinner. You will not enter the east wing of the castle. You will not wander the grounds after dark. His tone softened marginally. Otherwise, your time is your own. The library is extensive. The grounds within the walls are pleasant during daylight hours. It sounded like a comfortable prison. And how long will this arrangement last? Dorian smiled, revealing teeth that seemed unnaturally white and sharp. Until death parts us, of course. Is that not the traditional vow? The rest of the meal passed in uneasy conversation. Dorian asked questions about her education, seeming pleased when she mentioned her father had taught her history, languages, and natural philosophy. He spoke little of himself, deflecting personal questions with practiced ease. As they finished, he rose and approached her chair. Felicity tensed as he extended his hand to help her rise. But when their skin touched, a jolt like static electricity passed between them. She gasped, nearly stumbling. Fascinating, Dorian murmured, his eyes suddenly intense. You felt that, did you not? Before she could respond, the doors burst open, and a man strode in, younger than Dorian but with a similar bearing, though his features were sharper, more feral. Brother, the newcomer said, ignoring Felicity entirely. There is news from the north. The Carstairs have broken the accord. Dorian's posture changed instantly, becoming rigid with authority. Victor, you forget yourself. This is my wife, Lady Felicity. Victor's eyes snapped to her, widening slightly. So the rumors are true. You actually married a human. He approached, circling her like a predator. She smells unusual. Old blood indeed. Enough. Dorian's voice was quiet but carried such menace that Victor immediately stepped back. Leave us. I will join you shortly. When they were alone again, Felicity found her voice. Human? As opposed to what exactly? Dorian's face became an expressionless mask. My brother has peculiar ideas. He fancies himself something other than human, a creature of legend. He took her hand again, this time raising it to his lips. His touch was cool, his skin like polished marble. Rest well, Felicity. Tomorrow, Mrs. Hemlock will show you more of your new home. With that, he was gone, leaving her with more questions than answers and a persistent chill that had nothing to do with the castle's stone walls. Days stretched into weeks, and Felicity settled into a strange routine. She explored the castle's permitted areas during daylight hours, discovering rooms that appeared unused for decades, their furniture shrouded in dust covers. The library became her sanctuary, filled with ancient tomes and languages she recognized and many she did not. She saw Dorian only at dinner, and not every night. He remained courteous but distant, asking about her days with what seemed like genuine interest while revealing almost nothing about himself. She learned he conducted business across Europe, that the Draconis family had accumulated wealth through centuries of careful investment, and that he had no living relatives except Victor. Servants moved silently through the castle, appearing when needed and vanishing just as quickly. None would engage in conversation beyond the most necessary exchanges, and all seemed to regard her with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. Letters arrived confirming her father's improved health. He wrote that Dorian's physician had worked miracles, and that he now resided in a comfortable cottage near their old home, attended by a nurse. His letters always ended with the same question: was she happy in her strange marriage? Felicity always responded that she was comfortable and well treated, avoiding the deeper truth, that she felt like an exotic bird in a gilded cage, studied and preserved for some purpose she could not fathom. One afternoon, as autumn painted the surrounding forests in fiery hues, Felicity ventured farther into the gardens than usual. She discovered a small stone building, partially concealed by ivy, with a heavy wooden door that stood slightly ajar. Curiosity overcoming caution, she pushed it open. Inside was a circular chamber dominated by a stone altar in the center. The walls were lined with strange symbols, and recessed shelves held ancient-looking artifacts. Daggers with jeweled handles, crystal vessels containing dark liquids, and small statues of creatures she did not recognize. "You should not be here," came a voice from behind her. Felicity whirled to find Victor watching her, his expression unreadable. "I was exploring the gardens," she said, lifting her chin defiantly. "Your brother said I might go anywhere within the walls during daylight." "My brother says many things." Victor stepped closer, inhaling deeply. "He forbade us from tasting you, you know. Says your blood is special, meant only for him." His smile revealed teeth that seemed too sharp. "But he has not claimed you yet, has he?" "Not truly." Felicity backed away, bumping against the altar. "What are you talking about? You really do not know what you married, do you?" Victor laughed, a sound without warmth. "The great house of Draconis, the oldest vampire bloodline in Europe." "Vampire." Felicity repeated the word, a chill spreading through her body. "That is absurd. Vampires are myths, stories to frighten children." "Are they?" In a movement too fast for her eyes to track, Victor was suddenly beside her, gripping her wrist. "Then how do you explain this?" His face changed, skin growing taut over pronounced bones, eyes flooding with crimson. When he smiled, fangs extended where normal canines should be. Felicity tried to scream, but terror froze her voice. Victor leaned closer, inhaling deeply along her neck. "Just one taste," he whispered. "He need never know." "But I would know, brother." Dorian stood in the doorway, his presence filling the small chamber with palpable menace. Victor released Felicity immediately, backing away. "I was merely introducing myself properly to my new sister," Victor said, his features returning to human normalcy. "Leave us." Dorian's voice was soft, but Victor obeyed instantly, slipping past his brother with a final, hungry glance at Felicity. When they were alone, Felicity found her voice. "What are you?" Dorian approached slowly, as one might a frightened animal. "I think you already know." Victor, in his impulsiveness, has done what I planned to do more carefully. "Yes, Felicity. I am vampire. My brother is vampire. All who serve in this castle are vampire, or those who serve vampires willingly." "That is impossible," she whispered, though she had seen Victor's transformation with her own eyes. "Is it?" Dorian extended his hand. "Come. This is not how I wished you to learn the truth, but perhaps it is better this way. No more pretense between us." Against all reason, Felicity placed her hand in his. His skin was cool but not cold, and that same electric sensation passed between them at the contact. He led her back to the castle and to his private study, a room she had never entered before. Unlike the rest of the castle's Gothic severity, this space was filled with objects clearly collected over centuries, paintings from different eras, artifacts from civilizations long gone, and books that looked ancient beyond measure. "The Draconis family has existed for over 1,000 years," Dorian explained, gesturing for her to sit in a chair near the fireplace. Not as humans understand existence, but as vampires, immortal, powerful, and bound by our own laws and traditions. If this is true, Felicity said, struggling to maintain composure, why did you want a human wife? Why me specifically? Dorian's expression softened marginally. Your mother's family, the Langstons, descend from a line of seers, humans with the ability to perceive beyond the veil that separates worlds. Such abilities are rare now, diluted through generations. But the blood remembers. I have never seen visions or had any supernatural abilities, Felicity protested. The gift often remains dormant until awakened. Dorian paced before the fireplace. 3 centuries ago, your ancestor, Eleanor Langston, possessed the gift in its purest form. She was betrothed to my cousin, cementing an alliance between our houses. But another vampire lord, Carstairs, wanted her power for his own bloodline. He murdered my cousin and took Eleanora captive. The name sparked recognition. Carstairs, Victor mentioned that name tonight. He said they broke some accord. They have hunted the remaining Langston descendants for generations, believing that consuming the last of your bloodline would transfer the seer abilities to their house. Dorian stopped directly in front of her. When I discovered you, the last direct descendant, living in poverty, unaware of your heritage, I arranged our marriage to protect you, and to deny Carstairs what he has sought for centuries. Felicity stood abruptly. So I am not your wife but your possession, a prize in some ancient feud. You are my wife, Dorian corrected firmly, protected by ancient law. No vampire may harm the chosen consort of a primal house. But you are right that I sought you for more than companionship. The Carstairs have moved against us directly for the first time in centuries. War between the houses looms. With your abilities awakened, you could give us an advantage no other house possesses. And if I refuse, if I do not wish to be part of your supernatural war, something dangerous flickered in Dorian's eyes. The Carstairs now know of your existence. They will never stop hunting you. Here you have my protection. So I exchanged one prison for another, Felicity said bitterly. Perhaps. Dorian moved closer, his movement fluid and predatory. But you need not be merely a protected asset. You could choose to embrace your heritage, your potential power. His voice lowered. You could choose to become more than human. The implication was clear. You want to turn me into what you are? Not yet. First, your gifts must awaken. He reached out, his fingertips hovering just above her cheek without touching. The blood ritual must be performed carefully, gradually. A full transformation now would destroy the very abilities that make you valuable. Blood ritual? Felicity backed away, horrified. You intend to drink my blood? It is more complex than that. An exchange. Dorian did not pursue her retreat. But I will not force you, Felicity. You must choose this path willingly. And if I choose to leave, then I will arrange for your safe passage, though I cannot guarantee your safety once you are beyond these walls. His expression hardened. Think carefully. The life you knew is gone. Your father is protected only through my influence. The Carstairs have agents everywhere. Felicity fought to control her breathing, her mind racing through impossible choices. I need time to process all this. Dorian nodded once. You have until the next full moon, 2 weeks. After that, the Carstairs will move openly against us, and decisions will be made one way or another. He escorted her to her chambers in silence. At her door, he paused, studying her face with an intensity that made her heart race. Despite what you may think, I did not bring you here solely for your bloodline or potential abilities, he said quietly. There were other descendants I could have chosen, though more distant. I chose you, Felicity, because when I first saw you in Hollowbrook— You were in Hollowbrook? She interrupted. You saw me before our arrangement? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I observed potential investments personally. I watched you care for your father, negotiate with creditors who would have crushed anyone else, maintain dignity in circumstances that would break most humans. You have strength beyond your bloodline. Remember that in the days ahead. With that cryptic statement, he left her alone with impossible truths and a decision that would alter her life irrevocably. Sleep eluded Felicity that night. She paced her chambers, occasionally stopping to stare out at the moonlit grounds, searching for any sign of escape. But even if she could somehow leave the castle undetected, where would she go? If Dorian spoke truth, and the evidence of her own eyes confirmed at least part of his tale, then unknown enemies hunted her for her blood. Worse, her father's safety depended entirely on Dorian's protection. She had traded her freedom for his life, and that bargain still held. As dawn approached, she finally collapsed into bed, exhausted. Her dreams were vivid and strange. She saw herself standing before a silver mirror that reflected not her face but a woman with her features yet older, dressed in clothes from centuries past. The woman's eyes glowed with an inner light as she reached through the glass, her lips forming words Felicity could not hear. She woke gasping, the room flooded with afternoon sunlight. On her bedside table sat a leather-bound book that had not been there when she fell asleep. Opening it, she discovered a journal written in a flowing feminine hand, dated 1723. I have been moved to my new chambers in Lord Carstairs' eastern estate, the first entry began. He claims it is for my protection, but the bars on the windows speak to his true intent. I am not a guest but a prisoner. My betrothed is dead, and with him, any hope of escaping this fate. The Carstairs believe my visions will serve their ambitions if they can but extract them. First through ritual blood-taking, and eventually, they plan to drain me entirely during the blood moon ceremony. I pray for death before that day arrives, yet my visions show another path. A descendant who will avenge me, guided by a Draconis lord with eyes like midnight. Felicity read until the light faded, absorbing Eleanor's accounts of captivity, her descriptions of vampire society, the rituals they performed, and most importantly, how she discovered ways to control her emerging seer abilities. The journal ended abruptly after an entry describing a planned escape attempt. When Mrs. Hemlock brought dinner to her room, Felicity asked directly, "Did Lord Draconis leave this journal for me?" The housekeeper's face remained impassive. "His lordship suggested you might find certain historical accounts illuminating. He also asked me to inform you that the library's eastern alcove contains texts on the Langston bloodline and the nature of seer abilities, should you wish to research your heritage. And does he expect this information to persuade me to participate in his blood ritual?" Mrs. Hemlock's expression softened fractionally. "If I may speak freely, my lady, I have served the House of Draconis for over 200 years. Lord Dorian is unlike most of his kind. He honors his word and protects what he considers his. The blood ritual he proposes is not merely for his benefit, but would forge a connection that would shield you from other vampires who might seek to claim you." "You speak as though I am property to be claimed," Felicity said bitterly. "In the world of vampires, power determines everything. Unprotected humans with special bloodlines are considered resources, not individuals with rights." The housekeeper arranged the dinner tray with precise movements. "Lord Dorian offers you a choice. Most of his kind would not." After Mrs. Hemlock departed, Felicity could not bring herself to eat. Instead, she returned to Eleanor's journal, reading passages about the seer abilities, how they manifested in dreams at first, then in waking visions triggered by touch, and finally in controlled sight that could pierce veils of time and space. Despite her skepticism, Felicity could not deny the strange dreams she had experienced since arriving at Blackmere, nor the electric sensation whenever Dorian touched her. What if there was truth to his claims about her bloodline? The next morning, she went directly to the library's eastern alcove. True to Mrs. Hemlock's word, she found shelves containing histories of vampire houses, genealogical records of seer bloodlines, and grimoires detailing rituals of blood magic. She spent days immersed in these texts, emerging only for meals and brief walks in the garden to clear her head. On the 5th day after Dorian's revelation, as twilight descended, Felicity stood in the garden near the ritual building where Victor had accosted her. The memory still made her shudder, but something compelled her to return, to understand more about the world she had unwittingly entered. Seeking answers? Came Dorian's voice from behind her. She turned to find him watching her, his tall figure silhouetted against the darkening sky. Perhaps, or perhaps just fresh air after days in the library. And what have your studies revealed? He approached, stopping a respectful distance away. That vampire society is ancient, bound by traditions and laws as complex as any human civilization. That seers were once revered among both humans and vampires for their ability to glimpse possible futures and hidden truths. She met his gaze steadily. And that blood rituals between vampires and human seers can indeed awaken latent abilities, though often at great cost to the human. The texts speak of historical practices, Dorian clarified. Modern blood rituals are more refined, less dangerous to the human participant. I would never subject you to the crude methods of centuries past. Yet the goal remains the same, to use my supposed abilities for your advantage in a vampire war. For our mutual protection, he corrected. The Carstairs will not stop. They believe consuming the last Langston will transfer all the accumulated power of your bloodline to their house. And what do you believe? Felicity challenged. Dorian's expression softened. I believe that abilities must be nurtured, not stolen. That partnership yields greater power than possession. That you, Felicity Langdon Draconis, may be capable of more than either of us can imagine if given the chance to develop your gifts properly. The way he spoke her name, with a reverence she had never heard before, sent an unexpected warmth through her body. You speak of partnership, yet you kept the truth from me from the beginning. You married me under false pretenses. Would you have believed me had I told you the truth from the start? A hint of a smile touched his lips. Would you have agreed to marry a vampire lord who sought your dormant seer abilities to counter his enemies? Put that way, the absurdity of it made Felicity laugh despite herself. I suppose not. I did what was necessary to protect you. Dorian stepped closer. But now I am offering you truth and choice. What exactly would this blood ritual entail? She asked, the question emerging before she could reconsider. Something hungry flickered in Dorian's eyes. A small exchange at first. I would take a small amount of your blood, enough to form the initial connection. In return, you would receive a drop of mine, which would begin to awaken your dormant abilities gradually, without overwhelming your system. And this would happen, how many times? 3 exchanges, performed at intervals of 3 days, culminating on the full moon. Dorian's voice lowered. Each exchange would strengthen the connection between us, allowing me to sense your location and condition. A protection against those who would take you. Each would also increase your sensitivity to the abilities in your blood. And after the 3rd exchange? Felicity pressed. You would remain human but with awakened abilities. What comes after would be your choice. To remain as you are, a human seer under my protection, or eventually, to become like you, she finished. A vampire. That transformation would require a different ritual entirely, and is not part of what I propose now. He extended his hand, palm up. May I show you something? Against her better judgment, Felicity placed her hand in his. That now familiar electric sensation flowed between them, but this time Dorian did not release her. Instead, he closed his eyes, and suddenly images flooded Felicity's mind. Glimpses of Dorian through centuries, dressed in the fashion of different eras, moving through history as an observer and occasional participant. She saw battles between vampire houses, treaties formed and broken, and always Dorian searching for something just beyond reach. When the connection broke, Felicity gasped, stumbling slightly. Dorian steadied her with gentle hands on her shoulders. What was that? She demanded. A taste of what is possible between us. My memories shared directly with your mind. With your abilities awakened, you could perceive far more. Not just the past but possible futures. Hidden truths, the very fabric of reality that most beings cannot perceive. Felicity's heart raced with equal parts fear and exhilaration. The glimpse into Dorian's past had been intoxicating, revealing a depth to him she had only guessed at. She stepped back, needing distance to think clearly. "I need one more day," she said finally, "to consider everything." Dorian nodded, respect evident in his expression. "The choice must be yours, freely made. But remember, the full moon approaches. With it comes the Carstairs' planned assault on our territory." He left her then, alone in the twilight garden with possibilities unfolding before her like the night blooms that were just opening their petals to the rising moon. The next evening, Felicity made her decision. She found Dorian in his study, poring over ancient maps spread across a massive desk. He looked up as she entered, his expression carefully neutral. "I will participate in the blood ritual," she said without preamble. "But I have conditions." Dorian straightened, giving her his full attention. "Name them." "First, my father's protection continues regardless of what happens between us." She stepped closer to the desk. "Second, you will teach me everything about vampire society, laws, and the history of the conflict with the Carstairs. If I am to be part of this world, I will not be kept ignorant." "Agreed," Dorian said without hesitation. "Third," Felicity continued, "if my abilities do awaken, how I use them will be my choice. I will help defend against the Carstairs because they threaten me and my father, but I will not be a weapon to be wielded at your command." A hint of a smile touched Dorian's lips. "You would make demands of a vampire king who has lived 1,000 years? I would make demands of my husband, who claims to want a partnership rather than possession," she countered. Dorian moved around the desk, approaching her with fluid grace. "Your conditions are acceptable. I expected nothing less from you, Felicity. There is one more thing." She held his gaze steadily. "I want to understand why you chose me specifically. Not just my bloodline, but me. You said you watched me in Hollowbrook. Why?" Something vulnerable flickered in Dorian's eyes. "The Langston bloodline has been scattered, diluted over centuries. There were others with the potential for seer abilities, though more distant from Eleonora's direct line. But when I began searching, tracing genealogies across continents, your name emerged with a resonance I cannot fully explain." "Resonance?" Felicity pressed. "Vampires as old as I am develop certain instincts. When I first saw you in Hollowbrook, caring for your father despite your own exhaustion, negotiating with creditors with dignity intact, I recognized something in you that answered something in me." He paused, seeming to search for words. "Vampires exist for centuries, watching humans live and die like mayflies. We become detached, cold. But you, your determination, your fierce protection of what you loved, it awakened something I thought long dead." The admission, so honest and unexpected, caught Felicity off guard. For the first time, she saw Dorian not as a supernatural predator or manipulative aristocrat, but as a being capable of loneliness, of admiration, perhaps even of genuine connection. "When do we begin?" she asked softly. "Tonight, if you are willing. The ritual requires specific preparations." That evening, Dorian led her to the stone building in the garden. Now illuminated by dozens of candles, the circular chamber felt less forbidding. The stone altar at the center had been covered with black velvet, upon which rested a silver dagger and 2 crystal goblets. "The ritual is simple in execution but profound in effect," Dorian explained, his voice taking on a formal quality. 3 drops of your blood freely given, 3 drops of mine freely offered. The exchange creates the initial bond that will begin to awaken your dormant abilities." Felicity nodded, suppressing a shiver of apprehension. "Will it hurt?" "The cut will sting briefly. The blood itself." His eyes darkened. "You may experience sensations that are intense but not painful. Your mind will begin to open to perceptions currently hidden from you." He gestured for her to stand on one side of the altar while he took position opposite her. The candlelight cast dramatic shadows across his face, emphasizing the inhuman perfection of his features. "Are you certain?" he asked one final time. Felicity took a deep breath. "I am." Dorian lifted the silver dagger. "Then we begin." With practiced precision, he made a small cut on his palm, allowing 3 drops of his dark blood to fall into one crystal goblet. Then he extended the dagger to Felicity. Her hand trembled slightly as she took it. The blade was surprisingly warm against her skin. Following Dorian's example, she pressed the sharp edge to her palm, wincing at the sting. 3 drops of her crimson blood fell into the second goblet. Dorian took both goblets, holding her gaze as he poured his blood into her goblet and hers into his, a symbolic exchange before the actual consumption. "Drink," he commanded softly, offering her goblet. Felicity hesitated only a moment before raising the goblet to her lips. The liquid was metallic, strange. Just 3 drops of Dorian's blood mixed with her own. Yet it seemed to burn a path down her throat and into her core. Across the altar, Dorian consumed the contents of his goblet, his eyes never leaving hers. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, sensation exploded through Felicity's body. Heat rushed along her veins, and her vision blurred, then sharpened with preternatural clarity. She could suddenly see the individual flames of each candle, the microscopic patterns in the stone walls, the subtle aura of power that surrounded Dorian like a midnight cloak. She gasped, gripping the edge of the altar as the room seemed to pulse around her. "What is happening? Your senses are awakening?" Dorian's voice sounded different, richer, more textured, as though she could hear layers of meaning behind his words. "This is only the beginning. The first exchange opens pathways long dormant in your blood." As suddenly as it had come, the intensity faded, leaving Felicity dizzy but exhilarated. Her vision returned to normal, though colors seemed slightly more vibrant than before. That was, she struggled to find words. "Overwhelming for a first experience," Dorian supplied, moving around the altar to support her with a gentle hand at her elbow. "It will become easier with each exchange, as your body adapts to the changes." "I saw something around you, a darkness but not threatening, like shadows with purpose." A smile touched Dorian's lips. "You glimpsed my essence, what humans might call an aura. Few can perceive such things, even among seers." Pride colored his words, and Felicity found herself responding to it with unexpected warmth. For the first time since arriving at Black Mere, she felt a sense of potential, of possibility beyond mere survival. "Rest now," Dorian said, guiding her toward the door. "The changes have only begun. Your dreams tonight will be significant. Pay attention to them." That night, as Dorian had predicted, Felicity dreamed with unprecedented clarity. She found herself standing in a grand hall filled with figures both human and vampire, all dressed in the fashion of centuries past. At the center stood Eleanor Langston, her features so similar to Felicity's own that they might have been twins separated only by time. Eleanor turned, seeming to look directly at Felicity. "So he found you," she said, her voice echoing strangely. "The last of my line." "You're Eleonora," Felicity said, approaching cautiously. "How is this possible? You died centuries ago." "Death is not what you think it is." Eleonora smiled sadly. "Especially for those with our blood. We see beyond the veil, and sometimes we remain connected to those who carry our legacy. Dorian believes I have your abilities, that I can be a seer like you." "You have more than my abilities," Eleonora replied, reaching out to touch Felicity's face with incorporeal fingers. "You have my unfinished purpose." The Carstairs thought they ended my line when they drained me during their ritual, but they did not know I was with child when I was taken. My daughter was spirited away by loyal servants, hidden where the Carstairs could not find her. And that child was my ancestor, Felicity realized. The blood remembers, even when memories fade. Eleanor's form began to shimmer, becoming less distinct. The Carstairs still seek what they believe I can give them, but only a willing seer, bonded by choice and not coercion, can access the full power of our bloodline. What is this power they seek? Felicity pressed. The ability to walk between worlds, Eleanora whispered as she faded further. To perceive all possible futures and choose which will manifest. The Carstairs would use this to dominate all vampire houses, to rule as gods among immortals. And what would Dorian do with such power? Felicity asked, suddenly uncertain. Eleonora's fading smile held secrets. That depends on what he truly values. Power? Vengeance? Or perhaps something he has denied himself for centuries. Before Felicity could question her further, the dream dissolved, and she woke gasping, the memory of Eleonora's words burning in her mind. The next 2 days brought subtle but undeniable changes. Felicity found she could see better in darkness, hear conversations from greater distances, and sense the presence of others before they entered a room. More disconcertingly, when she touched objects of significance. A book centuries old, a portrait of Dorian's ancestors, the ruby ring he always wore. Flashes of their history filled her mind. Dorian observed her developing abilities with satisfaction, teaching her techniques to control the influx of sensory information and images. During their evening conversations, he revealed more about vampire society, the ancient houses that ruled different territories, the complex politics that had maintained an uneasy peace for centuries, and the Carstairs' recent aggression that threatened to shatter that peace. They believe consuming your blood during the blood moon ritual would transfer all potential seer abilities directly to Lord Carstairs. Dorian explained during dinner on the second night after their blood exchange. It is a perversion of the natural bond between vampire and seer, but one they have sought to perfect for centuries. And what makes our blood ritual different? Felicity challenged. How is your desire for my abilities any less selfish than theirs? Dorian's expression softened. The difference lies in consent and outcome. Their ritual would kill you, draining every drop of your blood to fuel Lord Carstairs' power. Our exchange awakens abilities that are rightfully yours, creating a connection that benefits us both. A convenient distinction, Felicity observed, though without real bitterness. She was beginning to understand the complex morality of vampire society, where centuries of existence created perspectives that differed fundamentally from human ethics. Perhaps, Dorian acknowledged. But consider this, since our first exchange, have you felt weaker? Diminished in any way? Felicity considered the question honestly. No. If anything, I feel more alive, more aware. Because the ritual honors the natural order of your bloodline. Your abilities are awakening as they were meant to, not being stolen or perverted. That night brought the second blood exchange, performed in the same stone chamber but with a deeper understanding on Felicity's part. This time, when Dorian's blood entered her system, the rush of sensation was less disorienting and more exhilarating. Her vision expanded beyond the physical realm, allowing her to perceive layers of reality. The residual energy of those who had performed rituals in this chamber before, the ley lines of power that ran beneath Blackmere Castle, and most intimately, the connection forming between herself and Dorian. It manifested as a luminous cord stretching between them, pulsing with shared energy. When she reached out to touch it, Dorian gasped, his eyes widening. "You can see it," he whispered, awe in his voice. "The bond between us," she confirmed. "It's beautiful." Something vulnerable flickered across his face. Few seers have ever perceived the blood bond so clearly, especially after only 2 exchanges. That night, Eleonora visited Felicity's dreams again, this time showing her visions of possible futures. Some where the Carstairs succeeded in capturing her, performing their ritual that ended in her death and the corruption of her abilities. Others where she and Dorian stood together against their enemies, her powers fully awakened and working in harmony with his ancient strength. "The future is not fixed," Eleonora cautioned as dawn approached and the dream began to fade. "What you perceive are possibilities, pathways that may manifest depending on choices yet unmade." "How do I know which path to choose?" Felicity asked desperately. Eleonora's smile was enigmatic. "Trust not only your sight but your heart. The blood remembers what the mind forgets." The third day brought unexpected developments. Victor returned to Blackmere with news that Carstairs' forces had been spotted within 10 miles of the castle grounds. "They move openly now," Victor reported during an urgent meeting in Dorian's study, which Felicity had been invited to attend. At least 20 vampires, led by Lord Carstairs' eldest son Edmund. Dorian's expression darkened. "They grow bold, or desperate. The blood moon approaches," Victor replied, casting a speculative glance at Felicity. They know what you plan, brother. They seek to take the seer before your bond is complete. They will fail, Dorian said with quiet certainty. His eyes met Felicity's across the room. Tonight, we complete the final exchange. After that, no vampire can break our bond or use her abilities without her consent. And if the Carstairs attack before nightfall? Victor pressed. Then we defend what is ours. Dorian's voice carried absolute authority. Strengthen the perimeter. No one enters these grounds without my knowledge. When Victor departed to carry out his orders, Felicity approached Dorian, who stood staring out the study window at the gathering storm clouds. You're worried, she observed. More than you're showing. He turned to her, surprise flickering across his features. Your perception grows sharper. It's not just perception. I can feel your concern through our bond. She touched her chest where she sensed the connection between them. The Carstairs are more dangerous than you've told me. Dorian sighed, a surprisingly human gesture. Edmund Carstairs is their most skilled blood mage. He has studied Langston blood rituals for centuries, obsessed with completing what his father began with Eleonora. If he reaches you before our third exchange is complete, he could break our bond and perform their ritual instead. Felicity finished, a chill spreading through her body. Yes. Dorian moved closer, not touching her but near enough that she could feel the cool energy emanating from him. Which is why we must complete the final exchange at sunset, rather than waiting for the midnight hour as tradition dictates. Will that affect the ritual's potency? It may diminish some aspects, but the protection it offers will be complete. His expression softened. Are you afraid? Felicity considered the question honestly. Not of the ritual, not anymore, but of what comes after. The confrontation with the Carstairs, the full emergence of abilities I barely understand, what all of this means for my future. She met his gaze directly. Yes, I am afraid of those things. To her surprise, Dorian smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his severe features. Good. Fear acknowledges reality. Only fools face the unknown without trepidation. You've lived for centuries. Does anything still frighten you? Something vulnerable flickered in his eyes. More than you might imagine. Before she could press further, a distant sound caught their attention. A bell ringing from the perimeter of the estate. Dorian's posture changed instantly, tension radiating from every line of his body. They've come sooner than expected. The Carstairs. Felicity whispered. Yes, we must hurry. He took her hand, leading her swiftly from the study. The final exchange must happen now, while we still have time. They moved through the castle at preternatural speed, Felicity finding that she could match Dorian's pace without effort. Another change from the blood exchanges. Servants rushed in opposite directions, carrying weapons and securing entrances. The atmosphere had transformed from Gothic serenity to battle preparation in moments. In the garden, they ran toward the stone ritual chamber, but before they could reach it, a figure appeared on the path before them. Tall and aristocratic, with pale blonde hair and eyes like frozen amber, he smiled with predatory satisfaction. Lord Draconis, he said, his voice cultured but cold. How discourteous to rush your lovely bride through the gardens without proper introductions. Edmund Carstairs, Dorian replied, positioning himself slightly in front of Felicity. You trespass on Draconis territory. A necessary rudeness, I'm afraid. Edmund's gaze shifted to Felicity, hunger evident in his expression. The last Langston seer, awakening just in time for the blood moon. How fortuitous. How did you breach our defenses? Dorian demanded, his voice dangerously soft. Edmund smiled. You're not the only one with loyal servants in unexpected places. Now, I suggest you step aside and allow me to escort the lady to more appropriate accommodations. My father is most eager to meet her. I belong to no one, Felicity said firmly, stepping beside Dorian rather than remaining behind him. Least of all to those who murdered my ancestor. Spirited, Edmund observed with mock approval. Eleonora was the same at first. She learned obedience eventually. A low growl emanated from Dorian's throat, the sound entirely inhuman. "You will not touch her. I think you'll find I can." Edmund made a subtle gesture, and suddenly the garden was filled with vampires. At least a dozen materializing from the shadows, surrounding them completely. Dorian's eyes darkened, the whites disappearing as his pupils expanded to fill them entirely. "Felicity," he said quietly. "When I move, run for the ritual chamber. Bar the door behind you." "I will not leave you," she replied, equally quiet. "You must complete the ritual. Use the dagger to cut your palm and drink 3 drops of the vial in the silver box on the altar. It contains my blood, prepared for the final exchange." His gaze remained fixed on Edmund. "It will be enough to seal our bond." Before she could protest further, Dorian moved with explosive speed, launching himself at Edmund while simultaneously creating a path for Felicity through the circle of vampires. Acting on instinct, she ran, hearing the sounds of combat erupting behind her. She reached the stone chamber, slamming the heavy door and dropping the iron bar into place. Inside, the candles were already lit, the altar prepared as Dorian had described. Her hands trembling, she found the silver box and opened it, revealing a small crystal vial containing dark liquid. Following Dorian's instructions, she took the ritual dagger and cut her palm, allowing 3 drops of blood to fall onto the altar. Then, uncorking the vial, she let 3 drops of Dorian's blood fall onto her wound. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Power surged through her body, her vision exploding into kaleidoscopic perception. She saw not just the chamber around her but layers of reality beyond it. The energy patterns of the battle outside, the ancient ley lines converging beneath the castle, and most clearly, the bond between herself and Dorian, now pulsing with blinding luminosity. Through that bond, she felt his pain as he fought against overwhelming odds, his determination to protect her at any cost, and deeper still, emotions he had kept carefully guarded: admiration, desire, and something dangerously close to love. With sudden clarity, Felicity understood what she needed to do. The blood ritual had awakened not just her seer abilities, but her connection to every Langston seer who had come before her, their knowledge and power flowing through her bloodline into her consciousness. She placed both hands on the altar, closing her eyes and focusing on the bond connecting her to Dorian. Through it, she sent her consciousness outward, perceiving the battle in the garden with supernatural clarity. Dorian fought with ancient skill and terrible power, but he was outnumbered. Edmund hung back, directing his forces with calculated precision. They were not trying to kill Dorian, that would be nearly impossible given his age and strength, but to incapacitate him long enough to breach the ritual chamber. Drawing on instincts that felt both foreign and intimately familiar, Felicity reached deeper into the newly awakened powers in her blood. Eleonora's knowledge guided her as she traced the patterns of energy flowing through Black Mirror, finding the nodes where power concentrated most intensely. With a gasp, she channeled that energy through her body and into the bond connecting her to Dorian. She felt the moment her power reached him, his surprise, then his immediate understanding as his strength multiplied, his movements becoming faster, more devastating. Outside, the tide of battle shifted. Dorian moved like a dark storm through the enemy vampires, no longer merely defending but attacking with renewed ferocity. One by one, they fell before him, until only Edmund remained, his confident expression replaced by uncertainty. "Impossible," Edmund hissed. "The bond cannot be complete already." Dorian smiled, revealing fangs extended to their full length. "You underestimate her, as your family has always underestimated the Langston women." Edmund retreated a step, then another. "This changes nothing. The blood moon comes in 3 days. My father brings our full forces. You cannot stand against the combined might of House Carstairs." "We shall see," Dorian replied simply, before launching forward with impossible speed. Edmund barely escaped, vanishing into the shadows of the garden with Dorian in close pursuit. Through their bond, Felicity sensed the chase extending beyond the castle grounds, into the forest, and finally Edmund's escape across the border of Draconis territory. When Dorian returned to the ritual chamber, Felicity was waiting, the door unbarred. He entered slowly, his clothing torn and stained with blood. Whether his own or his enemies, she could not tell. "You did it," he said, wonder in his voice. "You completed the bond and channeled power through it. No seer has managed that after only 3 exchanges, and certainly not from a distance." Felicity approached him, seeing him now with her fully awakened senses, the ancient power that surrounded him like a mantle, the wounds that were already healing, and most intimately, the emotions he could no longer hide from her perception. "I saw everything," she said softly. "Through the bond. I saw why you truly sought me, not just for my abilities or to deny the Carstairs their prize." Dorian remained motionless, vulnerability evident in his posture. "And what did you see?" "Loneliness," she replied, moving closer. "Centuries of it. The weight of immortality without connection. And when you found me, I recognized something I had forgotten could exist," he finished, his voice barely audible. "A soul that could match mine, despite the differences in our nature and lifespan. You never intended to turn me," Felicity realized. "You wanted my abilities awakened to protect me from the Carstairs, but you planned to let me live a natural human life." Pain flickered across his features. "Immortality is a burden I would not inflict on anyone, least of all someone He hesitated. "Someone you could love?" she completed, the truth of it resonating through their bond. "Yes." The admission seemed to cost him, vulnerability exposed after centuries of careful control. Felicity reached up, touching his face gently. The contact sent awareness cascading through both of them, their bond pulsing with shared emotion and power. "The Carstairs will return," she said. "Edmund was right about that, and they will not stop until they have what they want." "I will protect you," Dorian promised. "Now that the bond is complete, no ritual they perform can break it or force your abilities to serve them." "But they can still kill us both," Felicity pointed out pragmatically. "And they will try with their full forces." "Yes." He did not attempt to soften the truth. Felicity smiled, feeling a strange calm despite the danger. "Then we have 3 days to prepare, and I intend to use them learning exactly what a fully awakened Langston seer can do when properly motivated." Something like hope flickered in Dorian's eyes, an emotion so foreign to his existence that it transformed his features, making him appear almost human in his vulnerability. "Together, then," he said, offering his hand. Felicity took it without hesitation, their bond flaring with renewed power at the contact. Together. The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparation. With her abilities fully awakened, Felicity discovered powers beyond what either of them had anticipated. She could perceive events at great distances, glimpse fragments of possible futures, and most usefully, detect vampire presences approaching Draconis territory. Dorian taught her to focus these abilities, to filter the overwhelming influx of sensory information and visions into usable intelligence. Together, they planned strategies, Felicity identifying vulnerabilities while Dorian mobilized his forces. Vampires loyal to House Draconis arriving from across Europe to defend their lord and his unexpected human wife. Victor, initially skeptical of Felicity's value, became a reluctant ally when her visions revealed a planned ambush that would have decimated his reconnaissance party. After that, he treated her with grudging respect, though he still questioned Dorian's refusal to transform her. "She would be safer as one of us," Victor argued during a strategy meeting the night before the blood moon. "More powerful too. The transformation would alter her seer abilities in unpredictable ways," Dorian countered. "And the decision is hers alone to make, when and if she chooses it." What remained unspoken was the truth Felicity had perceived through their bond, that Dorian feared corrupting what had drawn him to her in the first place. Her humanity, her compassion, the very mortality that made her perspective so different from his own. On the night of the blood moon, Felicity stood beside Dorian on the highest tower of Blackmere Castle, watching as the moon rose huge and crimson over the mountains. Through her enhanced senses, she could perceive the Carstairs forces gathering in the forests beyond the castle grounds. Nearly 50 vampires led by Lord Carstairs himself, a figure of ancient power and malevolence. "He comes himself," she murmured. "Edmund failed, so the father takes the field." Dorian nodded, his expression grim. "Aurelius Carstairs has not left his fortress in over a century. He must be desperate indeed. He believes consuming my blood under the blood moon will grant him powers beyond any vampire in history," Felicity said, recalling the visions that had come to her during meditation. "The ability to walk between worlds, to manipulate reality itself. Is such a thing possible?" Dorian asked, his gaze fixed on the distant forest line. Felicity considered the knowledge that had awakened in her bloodline memory. "Not as he believes. The power he seeks requires willing surrender, a seer choosing to channel world energies through her blood. Forced consumption creates only temporary enhancement before burning out the vampire who attempts it. Yet they have tried for centuries with seer after seer," Dorian observed. "Because Aurelius tasted Eleanor's power once, briefly, before killing her." Felicity closed her eyes, seeing the ancient memory as if it were her own. He has spent centuries chasing that moment, believing he could extend and perfect it if he could only find the right ritual, the right seer. A humorless smile touched Dorian's lips. "And now he believes he has found both." "He has found his doom," Felicity replied with certainty, opening her eyes. "I have seen it." The attack began at midnight with the blood moon directly overhead. Carstairs' forces surged from the forest in coordinated waves, using blood magic to counter the defensive wards Dorian had placed around Blackmere. The initial assault was met by Victor and his elite guard at the outer walls, while Dorian strategically placed forces prepared for the next phase. From the ritual chamber, which had been reinforced with additional protections, Felicity monitored the battle through her enhanced perception. Through their blood bond, she channeled energy to Dorian, who led the central defense at the castle's main gate. The fighting was brutal, vampires moving with preternatural speed and strength, ancient powers manifesting in displays of terrifying beauty. Blood magic illuminated the night with crimson patterns, barriers forming and shattering as both sides deployed centuries of accumulated knowledge. As the battle raged, Felicity perceived a disturbance in the energy patterns around the castle's eastern wall, a section not currently under direct attack. Through the bond, she sent an urgent warning to Dorian. "Deception. Eastern wall. Aurelius comes with a small force while the main battle distracts us." She felt his acknowledgement and his strategic adjustment, redirecting forces to intercept this more dangerous threat. But Felicity knew from her visions that conventional defense would not be enough against Aurelius himself. The ancient vampire lord had prepared for centuries for this moment, developing blood magic specifically designed to capture a Langston seer. Making a decision she had contemplated since her abilities fully awakened, Felicity opened the silver box on the ritual altar. Inside lay a dagger different from the one used in their blood exchanges. This one made of a dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "The blood remembers," she whispered, echoing Eleanor's words as she picked up the dagger. With deliberate movements, she cut a precise pattern into her palm. Not the simple slice of their earlier rituals, but an ancient sigil passed down through Langston blood memory. As her blood welled into the shape, she began an incantation in a language she had never studied but now knew intimately, the words flowing from her lips as if she had spoken them 1,000 times before. The chamber filled with swirling energy, the candles flaring blue then crimson as power built around her. Through the bond, she felt Dorian's alarm as he sensed what she was doing. "Trust me," she sent through their connection. "This is what I was born to do." The eastern wall breached with a thunderous crack, and Aurelius Carstairs entered Blackmere Castle for the first time in 5 centuries. He moved with the fluid grace of the truly ancient, his power a palpable force preceding him like a wave of cold darkness. The vampires accompanying him spread out with military precision, securing his path forward. Aurelius paused, inhaling deeply. "Langston blood," he murmured, his voice carrying easily despite the sounds of battle. "After all these centuries, I smell it again, sweeter than I remembered." With unerring accuracy, He moved toward the ritual chamber, easily dispatching the guards Dorian had positioned along the way. His power was overwhelming, honed through millennia of existence and enhanced by blood rituals too numerous to count. When he reached the chamber door, he smiled at finding it unbarred. "She awaits me," he told his companions, as it was foretold. He entered alone, confidence evident in every movement. Inside, he found Felicity standing beside the altar, her palm bleeding freely into a crystal vessel. "The last Langston," Aurelius said, satisfaction evident in his voice. "You have prepared your blood for me. How considerate." Felicity met his gaze without fear. "I have prepared my blood, yes, but not for you to consume." Aurelius laughed, the sound devoid of warmth. "You have courage like Eleonora before you. She too defied me, until she learned the futility of resistance." "Eleonora did more than defy you," Felicity replied calmly. "She laid the foundation for your destruction." Something like uncertainty flickered across Aurelius's ancient features. "What nonsense is this? The ritual you seek, the one you believe will grant you a seer's power, it was never meant to transfer abilities through consumption." Felicity lifted the crystal vessel, now filled with her blood. "It was designed as a trap for one arrogant enough to believe they could steal what must be freely given." Aurelius moved forward with blinding speed, but Felicity was prepared. The moment he crossed the invisible boundary she had established with her blood sigil, energy erupted from the floor, ensnaring him in patterns of crimson light. "What is this?" he demanded, his confident facade cracking as he struggled against the magical bonds. "Blood calls to blood," Felicity intoned, continuing the ritual Eleonora had designed centuries ago. "Power recognizes power. The debt of blood spilled unjustly returns to its source." The chamber door burst open, and Dorian entered, his clothing torn and bloodied from battle. His eyes widened at the scene before him. Aurelius Carstairs, one of the oldest and most powerful vampires in existence, bound by blood magic wielded by a human woman. "Now, Dorian," Felicity called, her voice strained with the effort of maintaining the ritual. "The blood price must be paid. For Eleonora. For all the Langston seers he has hunted and destroyed." Understanding dawned in Dorian's eyes. This was the vengeance he had sought for centuries. Justice for his murdered cousin and his betrothed. For all the pain the Carstairs had inflicted in their relentless pursuit of power. Moving with ancient grace, Dorian approached the immobilized Aurelius. 500 years I have waited for this moment," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. 5 centuries of watching you hunt innocent women for the power in their blood." "You are a fool, Draconis," Aurelius spat. "Kill me, and my house will hunt you both until the end of time." "Your house is already falling," Felicity said, her enhanced perception allowing her to see the battle beyond the castle walls, where Victor and the Draconis forces were now overwhelming the leaderless Carstairs vampires. "Edmund has fled. Your lieutenants fall one by one. Without you, House Carstairs crumbles." With a single fluid movement, Dorian extracted Aurelius's heart, the only certain way to kill a vampire of his age and power. As the ancient vampire lord collapsed into dust, the blood magic Felicity had woven pulsed one final time, absorbing the released energy and channeling it into the bond between her and Dorian. Power surged through both of them, a harmonization of seer abilities and vampire strength, unlike anything recorded in the histories of either bloodline. Through their bond, they shared the experience. Felicity feeling the rush of ancient vampire power, Dorian perceiving reality through a seer's expanded consciousness. When the energy stabilized, they stood facing each other across Aurelius's ashes, forever changed by what they had shared. "You knew this would happen," Dorian said, understanding dawning. "You saw it in your visions." "I saw possibilities," Felicity corrected. "This outcome was one of many, but the one I chose to pursue. The bond between us, it's different now." He extended his hand, and when she took it, the connection between them flared visible to ordinary sight, a luminous cord binding them together. The ritual Aurelius sought for centuries did exist, But not as he believed, Felicity explained. Not consumption of a seer's blood, but true partnership between vampire and seer, freely chosen and sealed in the willing sacrifice of an enemy who had spilled innocent blood. And what does this mean for us? Dorian asked, vulnerable uncertainty in his expression. Felicity smiled, feeling possibilities unfold before them like the pages of an ancient book finally opened. It means we are truly bound now, in ways even you, with all your centuries of knowledge, could not have imagined. You will still age, he said softly, pain evident in his voice. This ritual, powerful as it was, does not change your mortality. No, she agreed, but it extends it considerably, and it gives us time to decide if that is what we both truly want. Understanding dawned in his eyes. The transformation would be different now after this bond. Not the loss of my abilities, but their evolution. She squeezed his hand. But that is a decision for another day. For now, we have a battle to conclude and a vampire house to rebuild. As they left the ritual chamber together, moving to join Victor and the remaining Draconis forces in securing their victory, Felicity felt a profound sense of rightness. She had entered Blackmere Castle as a desperate woman escaping poverty through a marriage to a stranger, only to discover that stranger was a vampire king with an ancient vendetta. Now, she walked as his true partner, their blood bond transcending the conventional boundaries between human and vampire, mortality and immortality. Whatever future they chose, whether centuries together as vampire mates or precious decades of her human lifetime, it would be their choice, made together with full knowledge and acceptance of each other's true nature. In the gardens where they had fought their first battle against the Carstairs, Dorian stopped, turning to her with an expression she had never seen on his face before, hope, unmarred by the weight of centuries. I married a stranger to gain political advantage, he said softly. I found a partner who completes me in ways I never dared imagine possible. Felicity smiled, the bond between them pulsing with shared emotion. And I married a stranger to escape poverty, unaware he was a vampire king with a secret vendetta. Her smile deepened. It seems we both got more than we bargained for. Under the fading blood moon, they sealed their new understanding with a kiss, vampire king and human seer, bound by blood, choice, and something neither had expected to find. Love that transcended the boundaries between their worlds.